Somebody got some explaining to do. Where is the paid FEMA money from the West Side flood? We are talking around $400 million. Federal government to deliver Chicago and Cook County millions in disaster relief funds for severe storms and flooding, Chicago Tribune. January 9th, 2025. Chicago Tribune. Communities in Illinois will receive a portion of $12 billion in federal disaster recovery funds for severe storms and flooding over the last 2 years, including $426 million for Chicago, $244 million for Cook County, $96 million for the town of Cicero, and $89 million for St. Clair County. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development announced Tuesday it would distribute Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Assistance using resources from the 2025 Disaster Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act across 47 grantees in 24 U.S. states and territories. The money is meant to address gaps in disaster recovery and mitigation, funding that may not be covered by insurance or other federal and local sources. On Wednesday, Illinois leaders joined HUD's senior official Mary McFadden to discuss the announcement at a news conference in Austin, the West Side neighborhood where most 311 calls for basement flooding originated during heavy rains in early July 2023. That was one of many historical rain events the Chicago area has experienced in recent years, which low-income communities of color have often suffered the brunt of, particularly in July and September 2023 and in July 2024.
A year later, West Humboldt Park resident John Carr recalls his basement had waist-deep water. The water receded, leaving damage and mold growing still.
I just don't have the money. I just do a little stuff at a time. When you don't have the money, you do this.
His story is not unusual. Volunteers with the West Side Long-Term Recovery Group tell us they respond to a resident needing help, and they find others on the block with mold and damage that exists from flooding last June and July.
In some areas, it's literally chest high. It is not healthy for him, his kids, or anyone in this building because the air goes up through his ventilation system, and everyone here is breathing it.
Today, community organizers and residents report the group has helped 85 homeowners get mold out of their basements, and they have over 200 on their wait list.
People are inhaling mold. There are some people that haven't got checked out with the mold.
People are traumatized. They have mental health problems with the flood. They have physical health problems.
Despite over $300 million approved by FEMA for Cook County residents, residents here and elsewhere tell us the money was not enough and the appeals process is slow and complicated. Volunteers say most of their residents still waiting for help are seniors on fixed incomes.
You can only do so much free work, especially when it's haphazard, especially when the chemicals cost $200 a bottle.
FEMA provided funding for Chicago area floods multiple times, notably approving over $200 million for Cook County residents after the late June/early July 2023 floods, with a disaster declaration on August 15, 2023. As reported by Block Club Chicago on July 17, 2024. More than 63,000 Chicagoans applied for federal flood assistance after the July 2023 storms, resulting in $170 million in payouts. The Federal Emergency Management Agency assistance included $147 million in housing assistance and $24 million in assistance for other needs, which provided a critical lifeline for those who needed it most, officials said. Throughout Cook County, applicants had received $310 million, making this disaster the biggest emergency declaration Illinois has seen, FEMA Chicago branch chief Susan Jensen previously said. Last year's storms also prompted West Side Alderman Emma Mitz, 37th, and other members of the city's budget committee to urge the water department to ramp up its work to prevent severe flooding, which is likely to worsen amid the climate change crisis. We know that there's still much work to be done, Johnson said. We are acutely aware that climate change most impacts communities of color due to policies of neglect that have left these communities behind and caused tremendous amounts of vulnerability. Some sources are asking, where is the money FEMA paid out for the 2023 flood on the west side of Chicago? Some of this math is not mathing. According to breaking news from Chi/Deep South Press Corporation, a highly placed Chicago City Hall source states the federal flood relief and mitigation funding is held up since early 2024 by Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. If you were affected by the 2023 flood from the Chicago West Side, we like to hear your truth. Tell us in the comments. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.
New at 5, Mayor Johnson pushing back against criticism from Governor Pritzker as both politicians gear up for a long spring session at the State House.
WGN political reporter Tamon Bradley here with the latest back and forth. Hey, Tamon.
Hey, Micah. Hey, Ray. From Chicago to Springfield, political observers have been chewing on Governor Pritzker's not-so-subtle jab at fellow Democrat Mayor Johnson. It comes as the new General Assembly gets underway in Springfield. 24 hours after Governor J.B. Pritzker blasted Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson for having poor relationships in Springfield, Johnson responded.
I have personal relationships with individuals who are friends of mine, which quite frankly go far deeper than a political office.
This afternoon on the South Side, Johnson was asked to respond to these comments made by Pritzker.
They don't reach out very often, and it seems like they don't have good relationships in Springfield.
Johnson's rebuttal, he's close to Springfield power brokers, Senate President Don Harmon, who hired him on his staff years ago, and House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch.
Senate President Don Harmon, I would trust with my children. In fact, I've actually done that.
Next episode.
For this area, while in Chicago, leaders with education on their mind lobby the governor. In the push to shore up Chicago public school finances, attention is turned to Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson.
So this is really about our long-term sustainability. There's $1.6 billion that the state of Illinois rightfully need to ensure that the people of Chicago receive those dollars.
More and more city leaders have taken up that message, and the Chicago Teachers Union has adopted it as a rallying cry. But Governor Pritzker, who has signed multiple budgets boosting K-12 funding, insists there's no extra money right now.
What CTU and the mayor are talking about, which is, providing another $1 billion or $1.6 billion for Chicago public schools, that's just not going to happen. And it's not because we shouldn't. We should. We should try to find the money, but we don't have those resources today.
The governor says the money is not there in part due to the federal government.
We are all having to deal with the onslaught of Donald Trump on education in this country.
Facing a $734 million CPS budget deficit this year and the prospects of being short $1 billion in 2 years, Mayor Johnson says any amount will do.
And here's what's interesting. If the state of Illinois just offered up 12% of what they owe, we would have a surplus right now. And so again, this is not just about balancing this budget and ensuring that high quality education exists. This is really about setting ourselves up for posterity.
In addition to staffing cuts, the proposed CPS budget relies on $379 million from the city's TIF fund. But behind the scenes, the mayor and a majority of members of the school board want to borrow money.
I am offering up not just a short-term element. This is about the long-term vitality of our school district. And I know that there are people in Springfield who understand the value of investing in a school district that is overwhelmingly made up of working families, and particularly black and brown families.
Although he says he'd like to help, Governor Pritzker made clear today there won't be massive new education funding coming out of the fall veto session.
In July 2025, Brandon Johnson provided $40 million to upgrade shelters for privacy. That's correct, privacy. Notice the cat that brings comfort. You think the state citizens really wanted to hear that? Brandon and IDHS also started giving out freebies again to the quote, resident, the people, newcomers, migrants, asylum seekers, consisting of cash, food, medical coverage, and more. Brandon Johnson gets an A for caring for his people, but receives an F for mistreating Chicago's citizens.